Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Careers in Peacebuilding Talk Story series. My name is José Barzola from the Matsuna Institute for Peace at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Our talk story today will focus on foreign and international fellowships for the Department of State and USAID information session with Vanessa Adams, Patrick Branco, and Patricia Scroggs. Thank you for joining us today to learn about the journey into the profession. Today's event will be an information session to learn more about the Charles B. Rangel program, as well as the Thomas R. Pickering and Donald M. Payne Graduate Fellowships. Fellows receive support for a master's degree to internships, mentorship, and professional development upon completion of the program. Fellows embark on a uniquely rewarding career in international service. So let's learn about our speakers today. First, Patricia Scroggs has been the director of the Rangel Program since January 2006 and has enjoyed working with outstanding Rangel Fellows and scholars who are committed to making a difference in the world. She joined Howard University after 20 years of service in Asia, Latin America, and Washington as a Foreign Service Officer. Until November 2005, she served as a director of the East Asian and Pacific Bureau's Office of Regional Security Policy. In this capacity, she led a large office that handled security, multilateral affairs, counterterrorism, strategic planning, foreign assistance, congressional affairs, and transnational issues for the Asian Pacific region. In addition to traveling to over 20 countries, her overseas posts included Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, Korea, and Mazatlan, Mexico as a Foreign Service Officer. Her languages are Japanese and Spanish. She has an MA in International Relations from the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and did considerable leadership, management, language, and area studies trainings at the State Department's Foreign Service Institute. She was awarded 4 Superior Honor Awards and the Averill B. Harriman Award for Outstanding Contributions to Diplomacy. Also joining us is Vanessa Adams, who is a Foreign Service Officer, and in 2012, Charles B. Rangel International Affairs Fellow. Vanessa is a Native American and Hawaiian descent and grew up on her tribe's reservation in California. Vanessa is currently serving in Washington, D.C. in the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs, where she covers multilateral affairs, World Health Organizations, United Nations, G7, G20, etc., and the South and Central Asia region of the Office of International Health and Biodefense. Prior to this tour, she served in Bangkok, Thailand, and Matamoros, Mexico. Vanessa is graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, and completed her graduate studies at American University as part of the Rangel Program. Finally, Patrick Branco is currently serving as the state representative for District 50, which is a Kailua in Kaneohe Bay. Prior to this, he served as a Foreign Service Officer, where he worked as a public diplomacy officer serving in Venezuela, Pakistan, and Colombia. In Washington, D.C., he worked in the Office of the Special Representative for Pakistan and Afghanistan, and as a watch officer for the Operations Center, 24-hour nerve center of the U.S. Department of State. Patrick was a 2010 Charles B. Rangel International Affairs Fellow, the first Native Hawaiian selected in the program. Through the Rangel Program, he attended Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and did internships in the Office of Eni Falio Maiga and Embassy in Seoul. Branco, born and raised in Kailua, graduated from Kamehameha Schools and then from Hawaii Pacific University, where he received a BA in International Relations and Political Science. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Patricia. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us. We're really happy to be here, and I'm really thrilled that both Vanessa and Patrick are joining us. I want us to tell you a little bit about the fellowships themselves, but then I want to turn it over to the two of them so they can tell you about their experiences in the fellowship and the Foreign Service. So let's get started. I want to talk today about 3 separate fellowships. The first one is the Charles B. Rangel International Affairs Graduate Fellowship Program. That is a very long name. We just call it the Rangel Fellowship. The Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Graduate Fellowship Program. We just call that Pickering Fellowship. And the Donald M. Payne International Development Fellowship Program, which we just call the Payne Fellowship. So Rangel and Pickering are U.S. Department of State programs that lead to careers in the State Department Foreign Service. So these are our traditional diplomats. And then Donald Payne program leads to a career in the USAID Foreign Service. What distinguishes these fellowships from many other fellowships is that they lead to a job in the end. So if you get the fellowship, you're going to get the job, which is really exciting. That said, you have to really want the job because there is a 5-year service obligation. So that's why I'd like to start when I talk to tell you a little bit about the Foreign Service. So in the Foreign Service, we serve the American people and service the diplomats around the world. We can serve in over 270 posts around the world, as well as in Washington, D.C., in New York. Sometimes we even come to Hawaii for our tours. So we serve in a variety of places. But the majority of our career is usually spent overseas. We do things like promoting human rights, trying to combat trafficking in persons, working on national security. We try to resolve conflicts overseas. We work on international trade. We work on environmental protection. We work to promote exchange and understanding. We manage really large embassies. We help American citizens when they get in trouble overseas. So our jobs are really varied and very, very interesting. When I joined the Foreign Service, I wasn't sure that I would stay for an entire career and ended up loving it and doing so. And I think there are two main reasons. The first one is that it's a job that has so much change in it. So if you're one of those people like me that has a restless intellect, so like I can never decide what I want to do when I grow up because I'm interested in so many things, Foreign Service is great. You know, every couple of years we change jobs, people, we're constantly training in new languages, new issues. So intellectually, it always stays really, really fresh. There's always a new challenge. And the second thing is, I believe what we do matters. So whether we're helping an American citizen in trouble, like what you see in Afghanistan, or when we had to evacuate so many people during COVID, or working on trade opportunities for US companies, or trying to resolve conflicts, or trying to work on getting, for my career, like getting the Japanese to stop drift net fishing. These things really do matter, and I was always really, really proud of my job. So again, that's what happens in the Foreign Service. So if you're interested, we have these fellowships. So the fellowships are worth about $106,000 over 2 years. They have grown a little bit since your days, both Vanessa and Patrick, but basically what they're paying for is about $42,000 a year toward your graduate school, and then about $11,000 for internships. You can take our fellowship and go to any good graduate program in an area of relevance to the Foreign Service. That means that you can go to, I don't know, if you want to go to Harvard, if you want to go to Johns Hopkins, if you want to go to University of Hawaii, these are all fine. They have to be 2-year full-time programs in areas of relevance to the Foreign Service. So you can study international relations, you can study Middle Eastern studies, you can study conflict resolution, international communication, you can get a master's in business administration. You cannot do sports medicine, that really is not related, but other things you can. So you can do that. So we pay for a 2-year graduate program. You also get mentors throughout the entire program so that you really know about what you're getting into. You do internships both at the US Congress to learn about Congress's role in foreign policy, as well as overseas at a US embassy. So you can learn about the life and the work of an embassy officer. In both cases, you are paid, you get your housing paid for, you get transportation paid for. So these are paid internships. Then when you graduate, you join the Foreign Service. So again, if you get the fellowship, you get the Foreign Service. There's only one thing that can keep you out of the Foreign Service if you get the fellowship, and that is if you do not get your security or medical clearances. What those are, medical clearances means that, you know, we work all over the world and you have to be healthy enough to be able to work in sometimes difficult places. For security and suitability clearances, that just means, you know, you're getting a top secret security clearance, so you're trusted with the secrets of the nation. And suitability means that you represent the United States when you're overseas. And so what we do matters. And how we conduct ourselves matters. It's not that we don't have fun, but we do it legally. Um, and so the most common reason young people do not get security clearances is recent use of drugs. Not that any of you have, but if this is something you have done, please note that you have to leave. There has to be some time between when you did it and when you apply for a security clearance for any government job. Probably minimum of a year, but that all depends on, what you did with what consequence, things like that. So I just like to let people know, because there's nothing worse than when people get the fellowship and then find out that they can't keep it for that reason. So we try to provide a lot of information on that. Okay, so you're going to apply this year for the Rangel Fellowship. It's open now. You apply by September 29th, so it's coming up. Please get those applications started. Rangel Program at rangelprogram.org is our website. Go ahead and do it. You'll know by November 4th whether or not you're a finalist. We will interview the last, I think it starts November 30th. And you'll know by the end of the week whether or not you have it. So by December 3rd, you'll know whether or not you have the fellowship. At that point, you can go ahead and start applying for graduate schools. So we don't get you into graduate school, but we will fund the graduate school. Also, there are many graduate schools that provide additional funding. So it's not uncommon for them to give 30, 40, even we have one school that's now giving $50,000 a year on top of what we do, which tells you graduate schools are very expensive. But we want you to be able to go to the graduate school that you most want and be able to leave it without taking on additional debt. So again, you're going to apply. You'll know by December 3rd whether or not you are a Rangel Fellow. At that point, we'll start the process of the security clearance. You're going in May. You will come and start an orientation. After orientation, you'll do your congressional internship for the summer. You start your first year of graduate school. Between your first and second year of graduate school, you're going to go to overseas to do an embassy internship. Finish your second year of graduate school. When you graduate, you're going to join the Foreign Service. So that is a really brief overview of the program. Again, I told you Pickering is very similar because it's also a U.S. Department of State program. Right now, it is exactly the same as the Rangel program, except for one thing. And that is the fact that our domestic internships are someplace different. For Rangel, it's at U.S. Congress. For Pickering, it's at the U.S. Department of State office in Washington, D.C. Other than that, they're the same. We have made it really easy. We administer both programs. So we've made it really easy for you. If you apply to one, you can apply to both. And because the applications are identical, you have to put in both applications, but you can put in the same application. It goes to two different selection panels. The only thing you have to change is the is the word Pickering and Rangel in your personal statement, because that's just attention to detail, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible. Each program this year will give out 45 internships. That means together we'll be giving out 90 90 fellowships that will pay for graduate school and lead to careers in the Foreign Service. So that's a brief overview, and I'm really happy to talk more, but I really wanted to get to the stars of our show today, Vanessa Adams and Patrick Branco, two of our past fellows who are doing really wonderful things in the Foreign Service as well as in our program. So let me start with Patrick. You look like you're the first one on the list. Pat, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like in the Foreign Service?
Sure. As Patricia was saying, it's the perfect job for those who have restless intellect. Like for me, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I loved traveling, I loved studying languages, and I loved being abroad. And I also have a commitment to public service. And so that was really, really, really interesting for me. As terms of the family, like I can't tell you, like the Rangel family, it's a family. And actually my summer of 2010 was like the best summer of my life. Like you go to DC, you live in the Howard dorms, you meet 19 other people. In my year, it was 19 others that have the same interests. that you have. And we like would talk about politics. We would speak different languages to each other. We would go and play soccer against the Pickering Fellows. And my best friends till today are my Rangel Fellows. And that's what this program's about. It's an amazing opportunity to serve your country, but you're also getting into a cohort of other people that you're going to spend like the rest of your lives being friends together, and you see each other grow up together. You attend each other's weddings, you see each other, like Vanessa has her baby, right? Like when I met Vanessa, she wasn't married, now she has a little baby. That's the beauty of this. It's not only a career, it's a lifestyle, and it's a family. And so that was really my experience when I was a Rangel Fellow and in the Foreign Service.
Great. And where'd you serve? We heard briefly about your Foreign Service career. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure. My first tour was in Bogota, Colombia. So my master's was actually in Korea studies. I did my internship at Embassy Seoul. I had studied abroad in Seoul, all East Asia. And that was the beauty, like the Foreign Service. First tour, they're like, Bogota, Colombia, like not on my radar, never thought about it, but I had a great first tour. I was the AIO, which is the Assistant Information Officer, which is basically the press officer, like the deputy spokesperson for the embassy. And I traveled all around the country, managed staff, I did Fulbright. We actually had a really good program on helping wounded warriors in Colombia. And yeah, so it was great first year. And then we had a new ambassador and him and I hit it off. And I actually got pulled up to the front office. So I was his special assistant for the second year. And I traveled with him, helped him learn about Colombia. And then I went to Pakistan where I did my visa tour. And so it's important to note that within your first two tours, you have to do a consular tour, a visa tour. And so I did my visa tour in Pakistan. And after that, I went to I was the special assistant for the special representative for the Office of Afghanistan and Pakistan, a long title. And basically I helped him with all his travels. He was the lead negotiator in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So traveled with him throughout the region, then headed to Ops, which is an amazing experience. It's basically like the Situation Room of State Department. It's crazy. You don't get any sleep, but you're like in the know, which was super cool. And then I went to Venezuela. And then while I was in Venezuela, Maduro kicked out all the US diplomats, so I got evacuated out, went to Colombia, covering Venezuela, and then when the seat opened up in Hawaii, in Kailua, that's my hometown, I returned back home to run for office.
Great, thanks, Patrick. Vanessa, you want to tell us a little bit about your experience?
Well, I really think Patrick covered it. I will say, in addition to just how much of a family it becomes among your cohort, I also think it was a wonderful place to, kind of develop a little more as a professional and as a person. Coming into a fellowship like this at a fairly young age, early in our careers, I think it's really easy to have almost like an imposter syndrome when you come into this field of very high achieving people. People are going to Harvard, Yale. You're a diplomat. You're thrust into this world that some of us are not necessarily comfortable with, and the fellowship really offers just this essential support system that gives you the confidence to know that you should be here, that you do have something to say, that people want to hear your voice, and that you have a cohort of individuals who have your back. So I can't, speak enough about how important the fellowship is, and low-key Patricia Scroggs is the best resource you'll have for the Foreign Service. But it's been an amazing experience, and not one that I ever really anticipated being a part of. The Rangel Fellowship gave me this opportunity to break into an entirely different career and go to grad school, whereas I think that without the fellowship I would not have been able to get my master's degree. So the opportunity's been amazing. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed my tours. I started out in Matamoros, Mexico, which was definitely challenging, but you get a lot of street cred when you talk about rolling gun battles on the street and having to hide out in your house. So outside of that, we did a lot of really, I think, important and meaningful work helping American citizens in Matamoros, Mexico. And, looking back on that tour, probably some of my closest friends, you become really, really close in difficult situations. But when I was in Bangkok, Thailand for my second tour, I got to be staff assistant at one of the largest embassies in the world. And it was incredible to see all the different parts and all the people that play a role in creating US foreign policy. People you wouldn't even think of. Like we had like US Fish and Wildlife at Post. And I never would have really thought about that. But you have HHS, Health and Human Services, you have CDC, you have, legal or LEGAD and other offices. It was just really a great opportunity to see how all that played out. And, how an ambassador with a vision can really turn around the bilateral relationship with one country. You see both how many people it takes to make it happen, but you also see how one person can make a difference. So that was a really, really amazing tour. And then this one, OES IHB. I did not anticipate coming to an office that was going to be working on a global pandemic, but I work with some amazing people here in DC. It's a mix of civil service and contractors as well as foreign service. And, the civil servants are people who actually work at the main state building in Washington, DC full time. But I work with some incredible people in that office, and, it just has been across the board. I've worked with some really, really wonderful people in the foreign service, in the civil service here in Washington, and a lot of work, but it doesn't matter so much when you have a really good team.
So thanks, Vanessa. So I can keep talking about the fellowships. I'd be glad to talk about more about Rangel Pickering, what makes a good application. The Payne Fellowship, which also is open right now. That application deadline is going to be November 1st. USAID is a little bit different from State Department, and so your application has to be different for that one. But I'll talk about that. Right now, I'd like to see if you all have any questions for either you can ask me, you can ask Vanessa, you can ask Patrick. Well, we're glad to talk about the fellowship, application process, the Foreign Service, anything you'd like to know, we're very happy to talk to you about. As you're thinking of your questions, and I guess you're going to be typing them in, again, let me tell you what's a little bit different from the USAID Foreign Service and the State Department Foreign Service. In the State Department, we say we're generalists. Even though we do have what we call a career track, something that we kind of specialize in, we do so many different things. So I'm an economic officer. Vanessa, you're economic too, aren't you? Or you? I know Patrick was a public diplomacy officer, but I've worked in doing a little bit of everything: economics, political, public diplomacy, management, and consular. We do a little bit of everything. In USAID, you tend to be more specialized. So you might be a health officer, or you might be an environmental officer, and you are working on our foreign assistance project. So you might be working on health issues in different countries around the world. And you will probably mostly be working on those issues. Whereas in State Department, you might be working in security one time and something else the next time. So if you feel like there's an area that you really want to specialize in, like education or health or something like that, USAID can be a very good option. Your application will look different because, again, you're going to a different agency and the work is different. You'll spend most of your career working in the developing world. And we'll be working on either humanitarian assistance or long-term foreign assistance. But it's a wonderful thing to work. We're colleagues. We work together at U.S. embassies. And again, another great career. Can you apply to all three of them? Yes, you can. That's perfectly fine. And if you'd like, Lydia, you can put it down. Obviously, I'm very bad at following my own PowerPoint. So am interested in hearing about what you all might be interested in. Okay, question. I have a question here. My question is that I'm currently a graduate student, okay, in Asian International Affairs, but I'm interested in pursuing these fellowships to develop more skills. Would I still be eligible? And is there an age limit? Yes, you're still eligible. Now, I don't know if you're a first or a second year graduate student. The only thing we're asking you is to do another graduate. So you have to follow the eligibility requirements, which being a US citizen, GPA of at least 3.2, and be planning to start a new graduate program in an area of relevance in fall of 2022. That means that you would have to start a new graduate program. And because we want you to go through the entire 2-year cycle with us, and that would be fine. We do not have any age limit for the fellowship. I think foreign service is 57 because we have mandatory retirement at 65. We're about 2 years, and it takes about 2 years to go through the program. So I guess it would be around 55, probably. But we have Rangel Fellows that come in right out of undergraduate. We have people that come in, late 30s with several children. And again, we're very open. I will put my information in my contact information if you want to ask me more about the program, about your program and how it relates to you. So do the fellowships require a master's degree be earned in the United States? It requires that the master's degrees be given by a US institution. What that means is if the US institution has a foreign campus, so both Patrick and I are graduates of the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. That is a US program, a US university, but it has campuses overseas in Italy and in China. But the degree is coming from a US institution. I pay the US institution, that would be okay. If you are going to, let's say, Columbia University and spending a year at Sciences Po in France, but all of the credits are coming back to Columbia so that I can see a 2-year Columbia master's, that would qualify. However, you can't go someplace like London School of Economics, which is not a US institution. So it depends. It does have to be a US institution. I have somebody this year who's studying in Ghana through Webster University. But it is a US university, so she's in Webster, Ghana. So there are some, we do have some flexibility, although not on the fact that it has to be, your degree has to be issued by the US institution. Yes, US citizenship is a requirement for the application. You have to be a US citizen on the day you apply. That said, many of our fellows are naturalized US citizens. We know that having that experience really adds to the richness of American life and to the Foreign Service. So it's very common that we have naturalized US citizens, but you do have to be a US citizen because you need that to get your security clearance to work for State Department. But you can become a US citizen that morning and apply to the fellowship that afternoon, and we welcome you. Yes, you can be a dual citizen. So a question, can you be a dual citizen? Yes. We have many Rangel Fellows who are dual citizens. That said, there may be some cases where that could be difficult, and that's what the security clearance process is. Most people keep their dual citizenship, and they just do something which is called not exercising citizenship. So if you're a diplomat and you're a dual citizen, you don't travel on your foreign passport because, again, you're a diplomat. You don't serve in the military of another country. So they just want to make sure that you understand where your primary allegiance is if you're a diplomat. Also, there are times you cannot serve in a country if you're a dual national because the other country does not necessarily recognize your American citizenship as more important than their citizenship. So they may not give you diplomatic immunity. Interesting there. Generally it is not an issue. We have people that have many, many different backgrounds in our program and in the Foreign Service. Okay, undergraduate degree in peace and conflict studies. We'll be pursuing a counseling psychology degree next fall. Is that a relevant area of study for the Foreign Service? And yeah, it sounds relevant to everything in the world, but I'm not sure if it's considered relevant. We have opened up this year to social work, international social work, particularly because of the fact that we work with American citizens in conflict areas that are really difficult. So we have not ever agreed to a counseling one, but I would certainly be willing to look at it and see if we could get permission for it. You and I would have to talk. You'd have to tell me how you consider it to be relevant. You'd have to tell me that there's an international component to the program, because so much of what we do does have to do with, overseas. So that usually is what we look for. What I would suggest when you're writing your application, if you're not sure, certainly put in, I'm interested in this program, but also put in a program that's really clear that we would accept, like, a master's in public policy or master's in international social work. That will get your application through to the selection panel. Then once you're selected, you and I would have to work through, different programs and see what would do it. Unfortunately, we can't look at every program up front because we get a lot of applications and people have a lot of different programs. So we tend to make our decisions afterwards, but what you want at this stage is for your application to go through to the selection panel so that you can be offered the fellowship. Well, people are thinking of the next question. Patrick or Vanessa, can you tell me about something that you did in the Foreign Service that you never thought you would do? Or a time that you were like, had one of those pinch me moments, like, I can't really believe I'm here.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So my first week, I arrive in Bogota. My supervisor says, I haven't had a vacation in a year. I need a vacation. I'm leaving. I'm going to go for the weekend to Miami. Nothing's going to happen. Don't worry. And so I arrived on a Thursday. Friday night, around midnight, I get a call from the Deputy Chief of Missions, kind of like the Deputy Ambassador, the DCM. And he says, we have an American that went into the jungle and was kidnapped by the FARC. He was looking for tigers. And I have the New York Times on the line and they would like to speak to you. So I take the call. I give some general press points, whatnot, and I immediately call our locally engaged staff. This is, if you join the Foreign Service, these are the people you need to rely on. They are Colombian nationals, Venezuelan nationals. They're in-country workers, and they are the experts. So lean on them and always treat them well. And so basically, they wanted a story. This guy got kidnapped, whatnot, and then at 2 a.m, I get a phone call from the Ambassador McKinley, who's like a 3-time ambassador. And then he went on to be the ambassador to Afghanistan, like top notch, highest brass of the Foreign Service, said that we're having a country team tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So country team is basically all the agencies. And at Bogota, we had 43 federal agencies. So it's a room with 44 of all the directors, all the top departments said, please prepare a press plan. And so me and my team, we scrambled, we got it, we presented, and we survived the weekend. But 6 months later, the FARC released this guy and the press was all over it. And so like, we got this guy, he was on a DEA plane, flew into Bogota airport, and then we had to like put dummy cars because people were trying to follow him. And then we had to like constantly move him until we got him out of the country. Just so we could help him. But yeah, that was my first week at Post, which is crazy. It's exciting. It always changes. And you have a good support system. So that's the importance of being in the Foreign Service. You have to lean on that support system.
Vanessa, how about you?
All right, we will see if she's going to let me get through this. Let's see. I think one of my favorite moments when I was in Bangkok over the summer, they had this team of soccer students get trapped in this cave that flooded. And it was, 10 children and their coach that had been out for a birthday party. And then all of a sudden the rain got really heavy and the entrance was flooded and everyone was trying to look for them. And it became this international effort. And, I was in the ambassador's office, so I got to see like all the different coordination that was coming through, and, US military came in to try and help. And then all these international divers who had gone through and mapped the cave before, they came in, and everybody was there trying to help find these kids. And it had been days and days were just going by. They were trying to go through and find them in the different tunnels of the cave, but it was a huge system. And, it was at that point where you knew that even if they found them, it was basically going from a rescue mission to recovery. And I was in the ambassador's office and it came on TV that one of the divers had found them, all of them, in one of the caverns in the cave. And this whole experience was just like a week-long thing. And it was just like a Hollywood movie, like everyone is so tense. You can feel it in the entire mission, just everyone waiting to find out if they're going to be able to find these boys. And once they did find them, then the work really began, trying to figure out how to get them out. And it was, I don't know, I think that was one of the most interesting experiences that I've had in the Foreign Service. And besides having her, I will never forget that moment of being in the room when they found out that the kids were all there, they were all alive. And then the process of actually getting them out and back to their families.
Good, thank you. So as you can tell from what Vanessa said, Foreign Service is not just a career, it's also a lifestyle. So like Vanessa, I went into the Foreign Service single. I met my husband during my second tour in Korea at the romantic demilitarized zone, had children in the Foreign Service. We do get free housing when we're overseas, which is very nice. Our kids go to school. Certainly there are challenges often with the employment for our spouses. Our spouses work doing many different things, but there are times it can be challenging to find something that's exactly what you want for your career. So there are, lifestyle issues that come with the Foreign Service too. So I won't tell you that everything is easy all the time, because it isn't. But it is a career that is interesting and that matters. Okay, is there merit to getting a law degree instead of a master's in preparation for the Foreign Service? And would a JD meet this requirement for a fellowship? I do have people that come in to the Foreign Service with JDs. We call them recovering lawyers often, but it's not in any way required. Because what we do is not law. Certainly, a law degree is always great in terms of, being very analytical. Sometimes we do have to do things, but you don't practice law in the Foreign Service. We would not pay for it as part of the Rangel program, because you don't need a law degree to go into the Foreign Service. One thing we will pay for, though, is there's a 2-year master's in legal studies. And that would be, let's say you're really interested in consular work and immigration, for example. There might be a possibility that you could do a 2-year program in law that is focused in an international area. And I would be glad to talk about that, but we would not pay for a JD. If you were looking at something that's really, useful, looking at a master's of public policy, master's of public administration, might be interesting. There's a school, the Tufts has a program, the Fletcher School of International Law and Diplomacy. You're not getting a law degree, but you're learning a lot about legal issues that have to do with international affairs. I always think that's a great program. So while you guys are thinking of the next program, let me give you some hints about how to write a competitive application. The first thing is, again, which is what you're doing, is you research the fellowships. You know, do you meet the eligibility requirements? Are you interested in a career in State Department? And by the way, if you are, our diplomat in residence, which is State Department diplomat in residence, is coming to your university tomorrow. I believe it's at 12, and we'll drop the link to his session in. So please go listen to him speak too. So that will be really interesting if you're looking at the Foreign Service. So first figure out whether the fellowship is right for you. Then look at your personal statement. You get to write a 600-word personal statement. And that basically says, you know, why do I want to be a Foreign Service officer and what do I bring? So, you know, what is it that motivates you? Do you have a strong sense of public service? Do you really like international engagement? Do you believe diplomacy is the best way to solve problems internationally? Do you really like the dynamic lifestyle of the Foreign Service? There's lots of reasons to be interested, but please write about the Foreign Service, not just international affairs, about and why you're interested in it. Second thing is what you bring. Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can definitely.
Okay, excellent. I'm so sorry. So the second thing is, you know, what you bring. You can talk about your academic background. You can talk about, you know, skills, writing, organizing, anything that's relevant to the Foreign Service. Internships you might want to talk about. You can talk about work experience. You can talk about overcoming obstacles. Interestingly, when they've done studies of what makes a good Foreign Service officer, it's not language skills, which of course help, not analytical. It's people that are resilient, people that have to, you know, work hard, that are able to deal with adversity. So if you're one of those people that had to work hard to get through college, first generation college student, immigrant to the United States, or just, you know, things have not always been easy for you. These are things that you can talk about in your personal statement if you want. So again, the personal statement becomes really important. The second thing to look at is, again, your transcript. We're just going to look at it to see what kind of classes you've taken. You can have any major and apply. So that's okay. We're not looking for the perfect GPA. We're looking for people that have tried different things. It's part of your overall application. I say that a minimum GPA is 3.2. Every year we have someone who has a 3.2, at least one who gets it, because, you know, sometimes you start school in the wrong major and your first year or so may not be good, or sometimes something happens while you're in school. Maybe you're working a lot while you're in school. We completely understand those things. So we look at everything when it comes to your transcript. Then we look at your letters of recommendation. You get two. One is from an academic, so one of your professors. If you don't know a professor well now, this is a good time to get to know the professor. Go to your office hours, because you're going to need letters of recommendation for something like this or for, you know, your graduate school. So please do form those relationships. Tell your recommender what you're applying for. So a good letter of recommendation actually talks about this opportunity. It's not generic, like she's a fine young woman who'll do well no matter what she does. That is not a great letter of recommendation. It's, you know, she's the type of person that would really excel in the Foreign Service. She's got great analytical skills. She's able to think on her feet. She has great maturity, and she has great interest in international affairs. That is something we can work with, right? So talk to them, remind them of, you know, how you've worked with them before. What classes did you take? You know, what'd you write your paper on? What were your grades? As someone who works with a lot of students, I remember that, you know, I adore certain people, but I may not remember all of the specifics, right? So help them through it. Tell them about this program, give them your resume, help them to write you a good letter of recommendation. The second letter comes from a community leader, and that's someone that knows you as an emerging professional. So that could be a supervisor at work. It could be a supervisor at an internship. Could be a faculty advisor to a student organization, just someone who's actually seen you in action outside of the classroom, that can talk about things like your work ethic, your ability to work in groups, your commitment to service, you know, anything like that can be useful. Write any community activities you have been involved in, work experience, all of those things. Use strong action verbs to talk about what you've done that show leadership and engagement. We also look at financial need. We would rather give money to people who need money than people who do not need money. So you're going to file your FAFSA for 2021, 2022. It doesn't matter if you got assistance this year or not. It doesn't matter if you're in school or not. We need this from everybody. So it's open now. You can go ahead and file for it as if you're going to graduate school. So we'll look at that, but we also give you a 400-word essay to tell us about your financial need, because financial need looks very different in different people. You know, did you pick the school you went to because you got a good scholarship? Did you work during school? Do you have things at home that, you know, may not be easy to see? Maybe there's a medical issue at home, or maybe your parents don't pay for your school, or maybe they paid for your undergraduate, but they're not going to pay for your graduate. This is where you get to tell the panel what you want them to know about your financial situation, both looking backwards as well as, you know, looking forwards for graduate school. Finally, we give a few points for honors and awards, so put them in there, and then please proofread and get your application in on time. So honestly, it's perfectly fine to engage other people in writing your applications. So perfectly fine to let somebody else look at your statement, help you proofread, because, you know, honestly, if you've been working on something for a while, you're probably not even going to see the mistakes anymore. You've read it so many times. So it's great to have somebody else help. That is perfectly acceptable. And you want to write as strong an application as you can. Vanessa or Patrick, do you have anything that you want to add to that? And then I'll get to the question about virtual learning.
Sure. When it comes to essays, I was just going to say, like, don't reiterate your resume. You know, this is your opportunity to add color, paint more of who you are as an individual. And, you know, make sure there's a strong commitment to public service, right? That is the key. Is you're joining the Foreign Service. It's a great life. It can be very glamorous, but what we're looking for is really those who are committed to public service and serving our country. That's very important for us. Other things I was going to say that you can help prepare is interning. Internships are really important. I think it shows what your interests are, that you have a strong work ethic, and that you're willing to work hard and just go for it. So, yeah.
Vanessa, do you have any tips on what helped you when you were applying?
Yeah, I would just say, like, try and think about some of the stuff that you do from within your own, like, cultural or your background that might be applicable here, because I think sometimes we have certain roles within our community that we don't necessarily consider will translate into something like this. And that's not always the case. You know, we can end up taking on a lot of leadership roles and showing those skills in things that we do with our communities that we might not always think of to put into these papers. But something like that, I think, really showcases the diversity of your background and what you can bring to the Foreign Service. So I would just try and, you know, put in a little plug for really considering those, like, cultural or community activities that you're taking on and how they can translate into your essay.
Good. Yeah, because your essay, your personal statement is just, there's a personal statement that only you can write, and that's what we want to read. So we want to see you come through in your personal statement. I had a question on virtual learning. So during COVID, I mean, normally our requirement is that you do a 2-year full-time in-person program. During COVID, of course, we've made exceptions for that because there are many schools that do not do it. Many of our school people are back again this year. So we're being a bit flexible on that. That said, our preference is for you to do an in-person program because you really get more out of the program when you know, part of a program is, you know, being able to have lunch with people and being able to go to programs and things like that. So, and we are giving you a stipend of $18,000 to help support you during that period. The deadlines for our programs, for the Pickering program, that's the first one. It's September 22nd. Remember, I told you the application is the same you should apply to both. For the Rangel program, it's September 29th. And for the Donald Payne USAID program, that one is on November 1st. So that one gives you a little bit longer. If at some point you're interested in our undergraduate program, that's a 6-week, no obligation on either end, fully funded program to learn about international affairs careers. That one is due the first week of February for 6 weeks, spending 6 weeks in DC in summer of 2022. So you can learn about that one on our website too.
I have a question actually for everybody who's any advice on how to introduce this experience, this new journey you're going to be going on to your families, to your communities, because you're going to be gone for a good amount of time. So I guess it's open to all three of you. Just wondering, what words of wisdom do you have? Or what did you tell your parents or your community? Or maybe you didn't. You just came back eventually.
Vanessa, you want to hop in first and then I'll follow you.
It's very hard for me to not laugh at that. Gosh, I don't think most of my family has any idea what I do. They think I work for the state of California, which is fine. My mom was convinced for a little while that I planned parties. And my dad thought that I was 007 running around Mexico with a gun and capturing bad guys. So despite your best efforts, sometimes people will interpret what they want or remember what they want about your experiences. So I don't think that I am the best person to ask about this because it's hard how to introduce it. I bring them back interesting food from everywhere that I go. That's how we manage that in my family. How about you, Patrick?
It's hard. I'm from a very close-knit, I grew up in a household of 20, a big Native Hawaiian family, and it's hard to leave that. And especially for us, Rangel Fellows or other fellows, most of us come from minority communities where we have these very close-knit familial ties. And when we're abroad, sometimes you're gonna miss Thanksgiving, Christmas. I remember missing my great-grandmother's funeral because of that. It isn't easy. And there's always, I think we have it a little harder as minorities or those who come from these very close-knit families because it's calling us back home, right? Especially for me or those who are, I'm the first in my family to attend a 4-year college, right? And, the hopes and dreams are kind of put on you and they're proud of you, but you're abroad, you're distant, you're far, right? And I have younger cousins, they're 8-year-old twins, right? And I kind of noticed I'd come home every 6 months, but they always I was like the weird cousin that just kind of brought weird gifts back randomly. And that was difficult, right? And that's for me why I came home, especially being Native Hawaiian. Many in my community, especially those who are highly educated, they end up going to the continent or they end up going elsewhere. And it's kind of a brain drain. And so there is that, for me personally, I was torn when deciding to stay in the Foreign Service or come home. It does get difficult, but you have extraordinary experiences. My dad always thought I was CIA, and I think he still thinks I'm a CIA agent, but it gets funny when you talk with it, and that's how you kind of deal with it.
I'll just answer that real briefly. So for me, no, my parents didn't quite understand what it was. Sometimes they thought my job was drinking champagne in Paris. So they were very, they were disappointed that I didn't actually want to serve in Europe. I really liked developing countries. But my decision to join the Foreign Service changed my entire family. So again, not particularly international, but when I went into the Foreign Service, my first tour, my younger brother came to visit me. He was an engineer. As my parents would tell you, he had a stable job in the United States. He liked it so much, he joined the Foreign Service. So both of us had raised our families in the Foreign Service. My parents learned to travel. They came to visit us, different places that we went. My nieces and nephews, we both raised families in the Foreign Service. So sometimes it changes your entire family. No, they don't know exactly what you do, but how many people really know what you do on a regular basis? I know that that they were proud of me, and I know that even today, when I no longer am in the Foreign Service, my mom calls me every time there's an international crisis just to make sure I'm not there. Are you in Afghanistan? No, I'm not in Afghanistan. Is Keith in Afghanistan? No, neither one of us is in Afghanistan. Okay, are you going to Afghanistan? So, but it really, it was something really special, I think, for my entire family. And I really like that part of it. Well, I know we're getting to the end of our hour, and I want to thank you, Jose, so much for inviting us to be here. And I wanted to thank everybody who came to listen to us, and my colleagues, Vanessa and Patrick and Leela, for participating in the program.
I have to say thank you so much, and just for giving us that insight into your own personal lives, and just you're right, not parents don't really sometimes I've work in higher education, and I only get the calls when there's a cousin who's applying to college. They're like, can you help them out, basically? So I get it. Definitely don't get the CIA or 007 references. But well, thank you, Patricia, Vanessa, Patrick, for allowing us to learn about your work in peace building and the resources that could fund future peace-related service projects or graduate studies. Truly appreciate you all for opening up about your experiences, the lessons learned, the tips that have come out of today's dialogue, tips that I know will be very useful to future peace builders. Thank you for your kindness and leadership in the field as we explore our own journey into the profession. And last but not least, thank you to all you joining us for today's webinar. We deeply appreciate your interest in this field and interest in support and joining us to learn about exploring the journey into the profession through our Careers Peace Building Talk Story series. Thank you so much.